So with Meg 2, The Trench, it's the kind of film where you walk in knowing basically exactly what you're going to get. You're not here for the Oscar-worthy performances or the spectacular plot or character development, but more just a bit of fun and seeing a massive shark killing a bunch of people. Nice. And after recently watching a 3-hour historical drama plus whatever the fuck that was, it's always nice to see a movie that you know won't take itself too seriously, won't be trying to shove messages in your face, and all in all is hopefully just, you know, a good time. So does Meg 2 The Trench deliver a simple, easy to follow plot where we get to see more of Jonas killing a giant shark, doing some underwater exploration, and potentially coming against some bigger, more threatening creatures? Well, kind of. But before I explain all that, let's dive into the plot, shall we? So it's present day, and Jonas and the crew are on a new exploratory dive, which takes them 25,000 feet underwater. However, their mission spirals into chaos when they're betrayed, and they must figure out a way to return to the surface, as well as fighting off merciless sea creatures in the process, and save a bunch of people from, well, you know. Now, I'll be honest, this movie was pretty weak, all things considered. What made the first movie so fun was that the Megalodon was something that people couldn't believe was real. It was something to be genuinely feared, and the Meg itself was the main protagonist, and all it really came down to was stopping this huge shark from killing a bunch of people. That movie did, you know, exactly what it needed to do, and it was a really fun time, whereas with this film, it just feels like extra baggage that just doesn't need to exist. For one thing, the underwater exploration segment of the film goes on for like half of the movie, and at no point until the crew and their escape are they threatened by a Meg. It's mostly just a bunch of chit chat about how they need to remain calm and you can make it. And you basically know exactly who's going to die before it even happens. The whole sequence just felt like a massive waste of time, to be honest. And the only reason it really exists is to expose the villains of the story, which is basically just a group of people who act like they care about the ocean, but in reality, they just don't give a fuck. But the bigger problem is that each of the bad people are given like 2 minutes of screen time total, and all that we're given to make them the bad guys are a few bits of dialogue about how all they care about is money. The motive is super basic, which, don't get me wrong, is fine for a movie like this, but fuck me, these guys just don't even need to be in the film, to be honest. Because the bigger issue at hand once they escape is a bunch of Megs who are swimming around near a holiday resort, a bunch of dinosaur-looking creatures who got on land, and well, a giant fucking octopus. That's right, these fucking dinosaurs now exist here, and so does an octopus which is just as big, if not bigger than the Meg. So you might be thinking, why can't the movie just be about Jonas fighting more Megs, some of these dinosaur creatures, and this giant fucking octopus? Well, because see, when they went underwater, and once you get deep enough, you eventually reach a thermocline, which is this layer separating different zones of the ocean from one another. And while they were underwater and trying to kill a bunch of these creatures attacking them, they set off a bunch of explosives which create a hole in one of these thermoclines, allowing a few Megs and this giant fucking octopus to, you know, get to the surface. So basically, if they just made this underwater segment the first like 20 minutes of the movie, taking away the whole subplot of betrayal, which was just completely pointless, we could have had the final hour and a half of them devising a plan and fighting all of these creatures, but instead we had them underwater for way too long, 30 minutes of just a bunch of people making jokes and shooting at one another, only to get, what, 20 minutes of what we actually came for? This movie is just frustrating to watch, and for the entire first half, I was just waiting for the part where we finally got to see the scenes that, you know, took up the majority of the trailer. Fucking trailers, bro, they're so misleading. This film really felt like they were just forced to make a sequel, but they didn't want to replicate what they did before, and so they tried to come up with some complicated scheme to make it somewhat interesting, but all it really does is waste time and just take away from what audiences actually want to see. But as for some positives, I'd say that I liked a lot of the characters, and did genuinely feel the suspense in a lot of instances, where you weren't entirely sure if the person would make it or not. Jonas is the main pick here, of course, although you pretty much know that no matter what he does or gets himself into, he's going to be fine, but Jason Statham just makes everything more bearable, so no complaints there. Mark, DJ, and Ju Ming are also very likeable presences on screen, and in the final 30 minutes or so, do have some pretty engaging sequences, but as I say, that's in the final part of the movie, because the first half was, as I've outlined already, kinda shit. Ultimately, what this movie needed was less good guys versus bad guys, and more good guys versus huge, unfathomable sea creatures who will kill anyone and anything in their path. And sure, you could have worked in some bad people who are out to kill the good guys for whatever reason, and created for some decent action and satisfying death scenes, but this movie just completely missed the mark in my opinion, and what came of it was a super forgettable and unnecessary sequel that just didn't need to be made. But well, it exists, and at least it's not the worst thing I've seen all year. I'll tell you that. So, if you haven't seen Meg 2 The Trench, I'd honestly recommend you give this one a pass and just stick with the first outing, unless you're, I don't know, super curious of course, which in that case, go give it a watch, but just don't blame me when you have to wait over an hour for anything interesting to happen. Anyway, thank you for watching the video, like, subscribe, share the video, all that jazz, won't force you though of course, and I will see you in the next one very, very soon. Bye!